Welcome back. A lot to digest here from what we're hearing. We just heard from the live press conference of Jared Fogle, a former Subway pitchman, pleading guilty to 2 counts. I'm going to go through those quickly. Count 1, that the defendant committed the offense of distributing and receiving visual depictions of minors engaging in sexually explicit conduct and conspiring with others to do so. Count 2 charges that the defendant traveled in interstate commerce in order to engage in unlawful commercial sexual acts with minors. 14 victims, a lot to digest here. So let's bring some people in to talk all about this. Christy Paul is joining us now, along with Brian Claypool, who's joining us, I believe, from Los Angeles. Thank you guys both for joining us. Christy, I'll go to you first. Unbelievable. It is unbelievable. And I want to point out some of the things that they were just saying that I think really point to the gravity of this. More than 159,000 texts, more than 27,000 emails, more than 47,000 images of these children, and more than 3,300 videos. Brian, and then we hear, of course, the 14 victims. When you hear numbers like that, Brian, is there any chance that the judge in this case can sentence him to more than the 13 years that they've been bound to, or can he go above and beyond that?
Well, Christy, that's a great question, and I wish I could jump on the FBI, the U.S. Attorney, and the Indiana Police Department bandwagon and say, hooray, we got a great result with Jared Fogle. Because I'll tell you what, if these are the only charges that he's going to plead guilty to, we need to see the terms of the plea agreement, because I'm worried, Christy, that as part of this plea agreement, the law enforcement is going to agree not to bring any other charges against Jared Fogle, and that would be a travesty of justice here. Because as you heard, there were at least 14 victims. So why is he only pleading guilty to 2 victims? Here's another question I have. Did he actually engage in sexual intercourse with a minor? The charge said he traveled to Indiana to engage in sex, but it doesn't say he did. Has the police department interviewed the victim? Is that victim willing to come forward and say he had sex with her? If she is, why isn't he being charged with statutory rape as well? Another question, does the plea agreement immunize Jared Fogle from being prosecuted for statutory rape? And why didn't we hear about any interviews with the victims? You all heard a ton of text messages reviewed, emails reviewed, but the proof is in the pudding. Did we hear about any interviews with any of these victims? What are the victims saying? And are there more victims out there? Right. Why did law enforcement rush so quickly to cop this plea deal? Shouldn't we have solicited to the community to find out whether any more victims were out there so that they could come forward, so that you could package an entire deal to make sure he's put away for the rest of his life?
Brian, I just want to address the first thing that you said, because I do have the plea agreement with me right here, and I've been sort of skimming through it as we've throughout the show. And I want to read something verbatim so I don't get it wrong here to address the first thing that you said. And in number 7 in the plea agreement, it says no protection from prosecution for unknown or subsequent offenses. So the defendant acknowledges and agrees that nothing in this plea agreement shall protect the defendant in any way from prosecution for any offense not specifically covered by this agreement. So if other people come forward, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, they're basically saying this could change.
But the problem with that, Yasmin, is we don't know what's covered by this plea, but within this plea agreement. They mentioned 14 victims, but he's only pleading to 2. So my question is, does this plea agreement encompass the other 12 victims who are not part of the plea deal? So that we need to determine. Is he insulated from these other 12 of the 14 victims? If he isn't, then that's great, but here's another problem you run into. Isn't the goal of prosecuting a child predator to put that person away for as long as possible so that they don't get out and victimize other young folks? So if he gets out, let's say in 3 years, then what's to stop this from happening again? That's my biggest concern as a child advocate. And that agreement you mentioned, Yasmin, doesn't talk about statutory rape. Why isn't that on the table?
Right.
Why isn't that being discussed?
Well, Brian, there's certainly plenty more left to discuss. We're going to take a quick break. On the way out, I just want to read a statement that was issued by Jared Fogel's wife. She says, obviously, I am extremely shocked and disappointed by the recent developments involving Jared. I am in the process of seeking a dissolution of the marriage. My focus is exclusively on the well-being of my children. Neither I nor my family will have any further comment on the matter. I appreciate respect for my family's privacy during this difficult time. Stay right here. We'll have plenty more.